Hello folks, this week's news update is going to be dominated by the 11.10 PTR, with Blizzard having released multiple updates for Season 2 of The War Within, including a major change for raiding that I suspect could be the start of a process by the developers to revamp the raiding scene and give it a well-needed shot in the arm. But no matter what content you prefer, there is going to be something for you in this update, so do make sure to stick around to find out how 11.10 is going to affect you. But before we dive into all of that PTR stuff, we also want to catch up on what's been happening in the live game. This week saw the return of the always controversial Plunderstorm Battle Royale event. Thankfully this time around, with the community knowing what to expect, it's proven to be a lot less polarizing. The event continues to use the Arathi Basin map and will feel pretty familiar to anyone who did the first event. However, there are a bunch of new abilities and a few other minor tweaks, so there is plenty to play with. Sadly, the popular trios option has not made the cut, and we're back to being limited to solos and duos. If you're new to Plunderstorm, the good news is that there's now a new practice mode. This basically allows you to join the Plunderstorm starting lobby indefinitely. That lobby provides a limited space in order to test out abilities and practice against other players for as long as you like. The biggest changes are in the reward delivery. The Renown track has been replaced with a store called the Plunderstorm, allowing us to target the rewards we want. I personally much prefer this option. The 20-step Renown track from the original was one of the major reasons for pushback by the community. As while it did serve the purpose of encouraging people to give the event a try, it also triggered a version of the sunk cost fallacy for a lot of people who ended up spending far too much time in the event making themselves miserable. If you did the event last time, there is only 39k of plunder needed to get all of the new stuff. And that has led to some feedback from the community about it being too fast to complete. Getting all those rewards is something that would take you on average only 5 hours of play. This kind of feels like a no-win situation for the developers. I do understand the desire of people who really like the event to see it being made more expansive. For myself, I think that the rewards pacing is now pretty decent for mainstream casual players, but perhaps the event could have had some additional rewards that could only be used inside of the event. For example, some more outfits and weapons. This would have given the big fans some more stuff to chase, but without feeling like a burden for more casual players who only want the rewards that they can use in the rest of the game. Speaking as someone who is not a massive fan of the Battle Royale genre, but who is an avid mount collector, I've only needed to get myself 10k plunder. You get bonus plunder for the first Plunderstorm quest you complete every day. And that means my plan has been to do a daily run until I get the amounts. And that's the approach that I would recommend for anyone who wants the rewards but who doesn't like the PvP aspect. Last week I covered the announcement of the Global Warcraft in-person event. At the time, ticketing details were very limited. But this week on Monday, out of the blue, the first batch of tickets for the London event were released, with absolutely no warning whatsoever, only to quickly sell out, leaving a lot of people quite disappointed. There are going to be 2 more releases for the London event, one on the 5th and one on the 18th of February. And if this is an event you want to attend, I recommend keeping an eye on the ticketing site in those days so you don't get caught out. Hopefully though, Blizzard will learn from this and arrange to get us a bit more notice for the next event. And that, believe it or not, is all of the live news this week. It's actually lucky we have the PTR to give us something to talk about, or this video would have been very short. Thankfully, on the PTR, there is no shortage of news. As always, I am going to avoid story spoilers. But before we dive into that, at the time of recording, I'm just 40 subscribers short of the 1,000 subscribers mark. This is a very important milestone for new YouTube channels, as that's when I'll be able to fully join the YouTube Partner Program and be able to start to receive a share of the ad revenue and premium subscription revenue that YouTube makes from my channel. So if you have not already, it would mean the world to me if you could support my channel by subscribing now to help push my channel over the finish line. Starting off with the open world content and the new D.R.I.V.E car-based dynamic mount system. Blizzard this week have responded to community feedback so far, saying that they are planning to make improvements to the system. Much of the community feedback I've seen is very similar to my own personal first impressions, which is that the system has the potential to be a lot of fun, but in its first incarnation it also has quite a few issues, with a mixture of odd interactions with obstacles and camera bugs that are making it feel a bit unfinished. More seriously though, it has been causing motion sickness issues for some people. I suspect that this feedback probably wasn't used to Blizzard and they already had some plans to iterate more in the feature, but it really is good to see them provide an update like this, as it helps to manage our expectations and focus our feedback a little better. The other open world update is what is likely to be the very first baby steps along the long road to player housing in the Midnight expansion. If you did the Tiller's Reputation back in Mists of Pandaria, you'll probably recall that at Exalted, you were given ownership of the Tiller's farm, allowing you to set your hearth there. Well, in Undermine, there's a cool little side quest that begins with the offer of a free room. Follow that quest line and you end up with a room in a guest house, where again you can set your hearth. Obviously this is not player housing, but it is the closest we're likely to get, at least until we get a lot closer to midnight. I'm not 100% sure how well this will be used, as there is by default not much in the way of major amenities in Undermine. That said, there is a very accessible portal between Adornagal and Undermine, so it isn't going to be a major time sink to travel back and forth. I've been a fan of little places like this in the past, so I am wondering how it's going to feel once it goes live. Of course, the thing that I suspect many of you are most interested in is what changes we can expect for the major seasonal content. And don't worry, I am working my way up to the raid changes, but before that, let's take a look at Delve. Firstly, the Bountiful rotation is being tweaked to make it a bit less RNG to avoid the same Delve showing up multiple days in a row. Blizzard's description of this suggests that they will start that rotation with the older Delves before moving on to the new ones. Now, it really wasn't clear from the announcement if this rotation is also going to apply to the Delve stories, but I do hope it will, as the RNG in those stories turning up made getting the Season 1 Glory achievement extremely frustrating. As well as getting 2 brand new Delves, the existing Delves are going to be getting some new stories. These stories basically change the internal mechanics of the Delves, and having some extra stories will definitely shake those Delves up and give us a bit more variety. Now, the community had already data mined the arrival of Gilded Crests to level 11 Delves. Blizzard have now confirmed that this is going to live, also confirming the weekly cap of only 3 sets of drops of those crests. While I do understand the reasoning behind limiting Gilded Crest drops and Delves to avoid them feeling mandatory for high-level Mythic Plus and Raiders at the start of the season, I personally think that the likely drop rate of 6 Gilded Crests 3 times a week to be overly small, especially later in the season. I would have preferred to see the crest drops being a lot more generous, but be unlocked via the Delver's journey, maybe starting around 4 weeks into the season. This would have avoided pressure to farm the Gilded Crest at the start, while enabling more generous drops later on, when the high-level players will likely have moved on to a point where for them it will be more efficient to just stick to Mythic Plus or the Raid to get their crest. Those of you who've been relying on bountiful delve maps to get Gilded Crests in Season 1 will no doubt be well aware of how you can easily go for weeks without seeing any, only to get 2 or 3 in a row. Blizzard have acknowledged that this RNG is an issue and will be introducing bad luck protection to increase the chances the longer you go without getting one. There's also a bit of an update for Bran, where we're going to lose all of the curios that we collected so far, with a brand new set being added instead. Brand's also going to be given the ability to be a tank, something that the devs have clarified is mainly intended to be used by healers doing the delves to make it a bit easier for them to complete it. Now, for those of you who have been doing the level 9 and above delves, you'll no doubt be aware of those 2 Zekvir minions that can turn up and how tough and punishing they are when they encounter. Reading the developers updating these minions, it seems that at least some players have been abandoning runs when they encounter them. To address that, the developers are now going to be replacing them with a much less difficult version. However, the sting in the tail is that this new version is going to be able to turn up in every level of delves. And if, like me, you've been wondering about the transition of delves from Season 1 to Season 2, it turns out that at the launch of Season 2, the delve progress is going to be reset back to Tier 4, which will be the starting point for the seasonal difficulty increase, with Tiers 1 to 3 remaining as it currently is for leveling purposes. Sadly though, there's no updates on how the delve keys in Undercoin will be reset. Moving on now to the more meaty content of the season, and as for Mythic Plus, we've had a bit of an update in dungeon mechanics. This update is focusing on effectively reducing the frequency and severity of mechanics that require interrupt or crowd controls, something that the community had been finding an issue pretty much since the Dragonflight. This is a change that will be particularly welcome for pug healers and tanks, who often are expected to shoulder the entire load of interrupts in Mythic Plus runs. And for tanks, there's some even better news. The frequency of tank busters is also set to be significantly reduced. This has been a particular issue for Season 1 of the War Within. Here's looking at you, Grimbatol, to the extent that tanks had become even scarcer than is normally the case. If you've been finding it hard to find a group in Season 1, the underlying cause of that has been a severe shortage of tanks and to a lesser degree of healers. So things that make life better for tanks and healers is likely to also make it much better for everyone else too. And also for the Dark Flame Cleft dungeon, where the minecart mechanic in the lead up to the final boss has been causing a lot of concern, this is getting some pretty major updates to try and make it a lot less punishing. How well those updates will work is hard to say until we've got more of a chance to fully test it. Overall, it does seem to me that Blizzard have been listening to the player feedback around Mythic Plus, with many of these changes focusing on the major pain points that are being reported. How well this will work though is going to depend on how the dungeons are tuned overall, and in particular if Blizzard do reduce the overly large gaps between key levels, and doing that not just at plus 12 and above, but also at the more mainstream 6 to 10 levels. Unfortunately, due to the way that they scale gear on the PTR for Mythic Plus testing, this is not something we can really get a good handle on until the season launches. That said though, the initial experience of the new dungeon that they added has been fairly positive. Sadly though, there's no word on Challenger's Peril, which has received universally negative feedback from the community. Hopefully this is still something that will be looked at, as in my view, it adds nothing to the overall experience to justify the added toxicity and upset that it encourages in pugs. And finally for Mythic Plus, if you're someone who's been wishing to get more rewards at the higher level in Mythic Plus, reaching a rating of 2850 will now, as well as giving you immunity to depleting keys below level 12, now award another mount. The Enterprising Shredder Tank, a recolor of the Keystone Master mount. And now let's get on to the raid, which is getting probably the biggest reward update since Shadowlands, with the introduction of a 20-step Renown track. This is designed to allow us to earn 1 Renown step per week, with the raid offering twice the amount of reputation that you need in order to progress to the next step, meaning that you're only going to need to clear half the raid each week in order to get that full step. This Renown is going to be difficulty agnostic, and so it will be available to earn and use from LFR right the way through to Mythic. And there is also thankfully going to be a catch-up mechanic, meaning that if you start later in the season or take a few weeks break, you can expect to get a major speed up in the amount of renown you get. Obviously, the devil is going to be in the details there, but it does look like this has a lot of potential to add quite a bit of quality of life to the raid. I'm not going to go through all of the rewards in a news update, but it does include amenities like profession tables, vendors, and towards the end of the track, even an auctioneer in the main hotel in Undermine. You're also going to get a damage and healing buff similar to the one in the current raid, movement speed buffs, a hearth out of the raid, and even later on a portal to the raid entrance. On top of that, for rewards, you can expect to unlock a weekly augment rune and a chance at getting a few more, the return of the dinar style currency, albeit you will only be getting 2 of those in total, and finally, right at the end, an awesome mecha dinosaur mount, the Furious Florendo. My only criticism is that this track is going to take up to 19 weeks to complete, which given the raid season is likely to only run for 24 weeks or so, is, in my view, far too late for players to get the full benefit of many of the rewards. Many serious raiders often finish their raiding much earlier than this, and I think it could be a lot better if we got 2 renown per week. I also think that some of the later rewards, especially the auctioneer and the raid portal, which are near the end of the renown track, should be moved into an earlier slot so that we can enjoy the benefits of those rewards before our raiding is over. While these rewards will not massively change the raiding experience, they are pretty nice to have from a quality of life point of view. Raiding has felt like it's been a little bit stagnant for a while, and even though it's far from dead, it also feels like it's on a very long and slow decline. So it is great to see Blizzard starting to innovate and experiment with raid rewards, and I'm very much hoping that this is a sign of things to come, and it will be just the start of a longer process that will make raiding feel a lot more rewarding than it has been of late, hopefully starting to close the gap between it and Mythic Plus. I would much rather see that gap being reduced by improving the raid experience to make it better, rather than trying to pull Mythic Plus down to raiding, something that I suspect was a factor in how Season 1's Mythic Plus played out. Anyways, what do you think of the new changes to raiding? Is this going to make you more likely to raid in Season 2? And what else do you think Blizzard should be doing to improve the overall experience of raiding? Let me know in the comments down below. If you have enjoyed this weekly update, then let me know by hitting that like icon. And if you didn't earlier, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button and also the bell icon to get notified when I next go live. This is your last chance to subscribe before you forget to do it, and it's by far the best way to support my channel. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.